our session now, we've got 40 minutes. I think a timer's going to come up in a second. So the title of our session is Beyond the Game, Engaging Sports Fans with Short-Form Content. I'm sure, like the rest of you, pretty interested and excited to find out more about it. We've got a fabulous panelists with us. Alex, would you like to just give us a quick intro to start us off? Of yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex. I work at the Premier League and lead the digital media and audience development team. Thank you to Carlin for giving a nice preview of some of the stuff that we do in the overall sort of fan engagement space. And that's all there is to say.
Fantastic. That's a good start. Pat, over to you.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Patrick Burch-Lovell, Creative Director for the original and branded team at European Tour Productions. We do exactly what it says in the tin, big budgeted, original and branded stuff for our tour sponsors and partners through the year.
And last and not least, Tom.
Hi. So I'm Tom Halls, Director of Social at SailGP. So we're a 4.5-year-old championship now at this point. I lead the social team, which all of the social content you see across our platforms, we produce, edit, distribute, all internally. That's us. Fantastic.
We're going to definitely dive deeper on all of those topics. So, as I mentioned, it's 40 minutes. We are going to have some time at the end for questions. So please, if there's anything that you find particularly interesting, please make a note of it and we'll come back to you later on in the session. While I was thinking about the session and preparing for it with the fabulous panelists, there were a couple of things that really came to my mind that I was quite curious about. One of them is about short-form content, the teams, and how they interact with the legacy broadcast teams. I'm sure this will come out later on. What are those relationships like? How do you get the mandate to do your short-form content? How do you broker those relationships, etc.? And then the other thing, which always, when I was at AWS, was always a massive area of interest for me, which was engaging with fans and fan data, and just sort of understanding how doing short form content, how that drives you to be able to build fan data, whether you're actually getting the fan data, where's that going, etc. I think is sort of, certainly for me, that's very, very interesting. So let's get cracking with a few questions. So we're going to start off with some an easy starter round to get us going. So let's start off with a bit of context on short form content. So Tom, I'm going to start with you because you're furthest away, just to get you going. So as an organisation, SailGP, why are you actually creating short form content? What's the motivation to do it in the first place? What are you trying to achieve with it all?
So I think I probably hinted at that in the intro. As a 4.5, almost 5-year-old company, awareness is really key for us. Obviously, sports is a pretty noisy space. Fans have lots of options. Even within one discipline, within football, you've got the Premier League, EFL, you have upstarts like Ballers League. Everyone's fighting for attention. We are, the phrase that used to be cash rich, time poor. I think in this economy, we're probably not cash rich, but we are time poor. So being able to stop someone scrolling, being able to grab their attention and very quickly explain to them what you're about is a key part of our ambition with short form content. I think we've done that relatively well so far. But short form for us is that very top of funnel that really kind of introduces people to our world. It's 90% of our, the very base kind of viewership metrics comes from short form for us.
So it's very much sort of market building, educating,
it is. It's, education, market building, brand awareness. It's almost always the first touch point for us. People don't stumble across SailGP easily, as it were. So that's been our primary use for it to date.
And have you managed to do any monetization, or is it purely as you've described?
Short form monetization, less so. We work with our partners, Rolex, Accor, Emirates, on various pieces, and obviously that's built in with sponsors. In the last 12 months, we now have a 6-figure revenue stream that comes through YouTube, which is, significant for us. It's a nice to have, but it shows that we are my boss would challenge me that ideally we become more of a revenue centre longer term, rather than quite an expensive cost centre. We're not cheap.
Yeah.
SailGP Productions, which is the part of the business we belong to, is probably the second most expensive function at the company outside of putting on our events, because we're all internal.
Yeah.
So monetising longer term is our ambition.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's quite nice to not have that huge pressure on us.
Yeah, but it's coming.
It's coming, no doubt.
Alex, what about you? Because everyone's heard of the Premier League. What's your motivation for short-form content?
Yes, I mean, we're in the privileged position that we're, I guess, a mature product, and the Premier League certainly not lacking for awareness. But I think at the same time, when you have a product that is so ubiquitous, it's easy to define everyone as all being the same, and that this might be a sort of, strange statement to make, but not everyone around the world knows everything there is to know about football. And yet the way that particularly our broadcast partners and a lot of the established forms of engaging with the Premier League are for the knowledgeable fan. And so we've sort of pivoted really the role of the Premier League in the last couple of years to act more as a promotional and marketing vehicle for learning more about the Premier League. And so what the short form content needs to do is sort of go a level up and not assume knowledge, not assume depth of understanding, but actually provide more holistic context, provide more insight into the human on the pitch rather than just the goal itself.
And obviously you're very big internationally. Is there a sort of domestic international sort of lens on that?
Yes, very much so. I mean, Premier League fandom is growing. I think I'm going to get the number wrong, but an alarming proportion of people have actually become fans of the Premier League only in the last 4 years. And all of the sort of trends that you'd expect, and I'm sure Lewis would have touched on some of these, that people are coming in based on players, people are coming in based on particular national leanings for particular teams or players, or because football means something in their country. And so they need and deserve to have a slightly different experience than someone who has been born and bred and grew up a Premier League fan all their life. So we want to be able to provide that variety, those different types of relevance, those different entry points that are not taking someone off the street and saying, oh, there's this thing called the Premier League, you should know about it. It's more, you've heard of the Premier League, here is your route in, here is the different entry points for you and ways that you could become ultimately a lifelong fan.
Yeah, and the way it can resonate with you in your particular circumstance. Brilliant. Pat, so golf, short form content, tell us all about it.
Quite fitting that I'm in the middle, because I think our sport really sits between the two there, really. Obviously, we still want the awareness. Our aim is to create content around what is a very traditional and repetitive sport, but make that more engaging to a younger audience as well, as everyone wants to do. We want to highlight the player personalities. We have over 150 of them playing week in, week out. People aren't quite as familiar with them as they would be your professional footballers. So it's our jobs to promote those personalities as well as our tournaments as well, and get what is a long sport, a long form sport over 4 or 5 hours in the faces of people who go, oh, golf is interesting in that way as well. So that's pretty much.
But again, you've got quite a big, we discussed it earlier on that you're called European Tour Productions, but obviously you are
very confusing.
It's not quite European.
We are European Tour Productions. We work for European Tour Group. They're our sole client. However, the tour, formerly known as the European Tour, is now called the DP World Tour. Now, there's a sponsorship involved with that. We're from DP World, but it is now a world tour. Always has been, really, from its inception. We've played in the Middle East for however long. So, it is a world tour which sees us go.
But again, a big sort of international element.
Correct, yeah.
To that. Brilliant. So I was going to go a bit deeper on more about diving into the sort of size of teams and how you do it. And Tom, given that you said that you've got the biggest budget or the biggest cost centre, I thought we'd start with you to understand a little bit more about how you actually do what you do.
Not the biggest
you
budget.
Walked into that one, sorry.
We're the most expensive team to run, I guess. So for context, we are co-founded by Sir Russell Coutts, who many will know from his time on America's Cup, multiple, also Olympic gold medal winning sailor. He and Larry Ellison of Oracle fame had this crazy idea, 7 or 8 years ago, that they didn't like how America's Cup was run. They wanted to set up their own competition. As of last week, I think Larry was the second richest man in the world. So that's quite helpful, having that kind of backing. But Larry is also, we're very fortunate, and my boss, Melissa, our Chief Content Officer, Melissa will get monthly feedback from Larry on the broadcast and on our production. So he's a big content fan. So we have that going for us. With that being said, we're a little bit different from a lot of rights holders, and I think we're starting to see some more move into this space. I think Premier League are heading in that direction. We were born out of lockdown, essentially. We raced in Australia January 2020, and we all know what happened after that. So we had to cancel our second season. It got delayed for a year, essentially. And in that time frame, we moved all of our production remote, essentially. So 90% of what you see coming out on our broadcast cameras is produced out of Ealing in West London. We have one of our senior producers here and a couple from my team who are on site, but the on-site presence is pretty tiny. The broader production team that look after everything, so that broadcast, cameras, the technology, production, all in there, and then social, we're a team of about 30. The actual social team, the ones that are producing, distributing the content, I think we're about 10 or 11 at the moment. And our remit not only covers organic content that goes out there, but we also run the paid, the branded campaigns with our partners like DP World, Rolex, etc. as well. So we're well resourced, I would say, compared to a lot of, if I speak to friends at Premier League clubs, etc. The output they have for the size of their audiences is incredibly impressive. For us, we're probably more resourced for our ambition and where we would like to be. To Lewis's point earlier, we look at all of the channels and platforms and say, where should we invest and spend our time? So resourcing appropriately there is pretty key. But yeah, about 10 people all in looking at that. So, which is, I'm sure many in the room would be more than happy with that.
Yes.
We'd all like more as well, no doubt. So we're well spec'd, I think, for our ambition.
Very good. Thank you. Pat, what about you? Have you got 10 people?
There or thereabouts, yeah. We've got a bit of a split approach, really, because we have a tournament team. We're all based in Stockley Park, but we have a tournament team who deliver content week in, week out. There's over 70 tournaments across the DP World Tour, and the Feeder Tour, which is the Hotel Planner Tour, recently changed their name. So that tournament team, shooting, tutors, editors, they travel the world. There's someone somewhere at any point all the time delivering the weekly content that way. We then have an original and branded team, as I said, deals with those bigger pieces of content, which we'll have an original budget set at the start of the year. We will segment that out to go, okay, this is what we want to highlight. If we've got an idea for a particular player, we will put that into agents early doors to say, where would you like to do this? Do you like the creative? Brand-wise, that team is a bit more agency style, really. The briefs come in. We have creative sessions of in-house, sort of less than 10 people on that. We deal with that, do the whole back and forth with brands on agreeing on the creative, and once we're all aligned on that, we then, again, pick out what tournaments we want to go to. Understandably, those brands want the bigger names in their pieces, so when those big names, your Rorys of this world, when they play the tournaments, they're normally the tournaments in which we aim those at. Yeah. So, yeah, very, very regularly we're doing a number of branded pieces across that.
Definitely would like to come back to you on the branded piece. Alex, 10 people, more or less?
It's a little complicated. At the Premier League, we try to think of content, overall in terms of what's being produced for broadcasters and what's being produced for the Premier League as well. And there's a lot of overlap between those. We're increasingly working hand in hand on commissioning series. Some of you may remember the fan mail story when Jack Grealish met Finlay. And then he did his sort of wiggle worm at the World Cup. I won't do that again. And so content's being produced in many places by Premier League Productions, which is a joint venture between the Premier League and IMG, also based at Stockley Park, but also in lots of different regions. So we have 6 or 7 localised channels and therefore regional content teams, both producing and then distributing content. So when you add it all up, it's quite a large number of people. We're trying to make it work more effectively rather than feeling like you've got lots of people doing the same types of things. So there's one core group of people at the Premier League managing the strategy and planning and commissioning, one core group of people then managing all of the production, and then these dispersed sort of distribution teams is how we're trying to make it work.
Yeah. Okay, very interesting. So I guess the next thing I wanted to dive into a little bit was the relationship between what you're doing and the sort of core broadcast teams. I guess it's different combinations in, for each of you. Alex, would you like to just sort of continue?
Yes, I mean, I sort of just touched on it, that the Premier League provides a content service to its international broadcasters. Our domestic broadcasters are the host broadcasters, but we, through Premier League Productions, then create the match feeds, but also increasing amounts of programming for our broadcasters. Separately to that, we as the Premier League are shaping that content and that narrative slightly differently, as I sort of mentioned before. You could say casual fans over here, core fans over there. And increasingly, a lot of what we're producing for more casual audiences is also relevant to the broadcasters. I think the ad, and it goes back to the beginning, that we are working on, particularly with the broadcasters, is how is what we're doing actually helping drive promotion of a broadcaster's live coverage. Yeah. And reinforcing the fact that they are the home of the live match, but there is this network of conversation and added context and storytelling that exists in multiple places, some with the Premier League, some with the relevant clubs, some with other media entities, and trying to create more connective tissue or connections between all of that content, rather than everyone feeling like I have to own my own piece. And that just sort of creates fragmentation.
So Pat was talking about, work with particular brands. Would you ever do work for a particular broadcaster, for example, because you're trying to sort of promote the broadcasters?
Yes, we do, and we have done. In fact, for Supersport, our partner in Africa, sort of parts of Central and Southern Africa, they wanted to do a sort of guess the 11, greats of the Premier League from that territory over the years. And so we worked hand in hand with them to create that series and with the PLP team. And then it was both distributed on the Premier League local channels, but also across their channels. From a branded content perspective as well, as you'd expect, that is a really important area for our partners. And we have, deliverables in the thousands to produce and support for them, but in a way that is, again, relevant and meaningful to the fan base.
Very good. So, Tom, with you, I sort of got the impression it was all very integrated between the broadcast team and the social team because you're starting from scratch, etc. That felt like
we are one and the same team, which definitely has its advantages. Our New York race recently, we had our chief hype officer, DJ Khaled, on site, which is maybe another story for another day, maybe one for today at some point. But the advantage of having the two teams integrated then is Tom, who's in the audience, Tom Guest, and his team were shooting content with Khaled just behind the scenes on the build-up during the day, which we can then use for short form. But they also shoot with an eye for a broadcast VT or a segment as well. So that team, the benefit of that, it then means we can get that into our broadcast. We run our own broadcast through that team. We are also the primary destination a lot of the time. Outside of markets where we have exclusivity, we work with partners like CBS in North America. We have German, Spanish exclusive partners as well. But other than that, we go on YouTube and TikTok live stream as well. So and we manage that part internally too. So it's very tightly integrated end to end. We are seeing that landscape change. Obviously, 4.5, 5 years in, there's a lot more appetite from broadcasters to take our product now. It's not, I was at Formula E in the early days where we were going door to door, kind of saying, please take our content. Oh, there he is.
Here's some of it.
Can't recommend you let someone have a phone on an F50, one of our boats, or to try and let him drive it. But he had a whale of a time there. So that's a great opportunity for us to really leverage the fact we are an integrated team from there. And literally our executive director is sat 30 yards to the right of me in Ealing. We're in the same gallery. So if an incident occurs, we're able to coordinate social output with the broadcast output and then a follow-up with the CBS or someone like that. And we've done unique things, like CBS will do a pre-show quite often, especially we're in our North American swing we've just come out of. And then other territories, LATAM and Spain, we produce a world feed, but a lot of our broadcast partners now are starting to do a more localized show. But that's been an evolution for us, and that broadcast team is undergoing a bit of an overhaul at the moment to reflect our longer term ambition.
Very good. And Pat, are you still sitting in the middle between the two of them, or are you?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, with sort of two ways in which we approach it. Really, the larger original and branded pieces, as I say, we'll normally do those at, let's take next couple of weeks, the Genesis Scottish Open. We obviously have to take a big piece of branded for Genesis. We will always shoot those at the start of the week when we have access to players between Monday to Wednesday. Tournaments run Thursday to Sunday. We, however big the project, will always turn that round normally by a Friday or Saturday night and post that short form piece or teases to a longer form piece on our channels. That naturally highlights the player personalities, highlights if you didn't know there was a tournament on, now you do. So that in hand then pushes people to the live to go, oh, I didn't know the Scottish Open was on this week, I'll go and watch that. Making valuable content to the rights holders as well, like that's the key, and we've really seen that with a particular player, Minwoo Lee. We helped him grow his social channels. His popularity now is 10 times what it was 2 years ago. He gets it, to say, like, not everyone does, but he does. So he'll say yes to something which we go, okay, we can have a bit more creative freedom here, push the boundaries a little bit more. In hand, that has now meant that whenever he plays, we have noticed spikes in audience of going, oh, okay, he's in a feature group, more people will tune in, whether that's through YouTube or the broadcast.
Fantastic. So I think what we're going to do now is show some of your content, and you can tell us what you think's been pretty cool. So I think we decided to do that in alphabetical order, so that puts you first off, Alex.
Get my notes.
Yeah, get your notes. I don't know if Mr. AV at the back's ready to show some of Alex's content. Over to you, Alex.
So this YouTube Shorts, I think, as for many people, has been a real boon for us. And it's been very reflective of this idea that we're not trying to show the moment, we're trying to explain the moment. So we're increasingly looking to sort of demystify what's happened, explain the stories and the sort of less understood elements of the game. So this clip actually started life as a meme that went all around the internet. And so we said, well, let's take that meme that has obviously become a talking point for people and actually try and explain the story behind it. And it worked very well. With some good performance.
In November 2008, the midfielder had already directed. Do you have any other?
There should be one more, I think.
Scarf.
So this is a little bit different, and this goes back to sort of human context and storytelling. So this was for our Champions output, and we went and spoke to 10 different Liverpool fans across 10 different decades, all talk about what it meant to win the Premier League. So it's intended to be very emotive, show you why football is so unique, why actually their individual Liverpool stories are so unique and very sort of special in its fandom.
Really great bit of
that
content.
moment for them. So it's a longer one, but it's you can see the range that we were going after.
Yeah, and that old lady looked super passionate, didn't she?
Oh, I mean, they had a wonderful moment. You can't really reflect that unless you speak to someone who felt it.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Love it. Pat, have you got anything to show us? What do you think is cool?
What do I think is cool? We regularly work with other content creators as well, although we do have in-house staff. We we scale up and down depending on the event. So tournament team is a certain size, original branded team is a certain size, and then we use freelancers, be it camera ops and editors. That's one model. Another model is we do reach out to content creators who understand their own audience. One of which was a guy called Brandon B. He had a YouTube short you may have seen over the years with an ice cream that then he picks out a visual effects expert that reached 1 billion views, and we were like, this guy knows what he's doing. Not so much chasing views, but we were like, okay, how can we incorporate golf into what he already knows is his audience? So we worked with them creatively to come up with something that we thought would resonate not only with our audience, but with his and a younger audience. And it paid off, but we'll have a look at it.
Tommy, let's get it. Oh, it's looking good. Looking good. Oh, it's making the green. It's looking good. Come on, come on. Yeah!
Fantastic.
Yes, it was green screen, obviously.
How many views did that get?
That, I think, has just surpassed over 400 million across lots of different channels. Yeah. So, impressive stuff from that studio who's sort of working alongside us.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Do you have anything else, or was it just one clip? I can't remember. That was it. Brilliant.
That was it.
Tom, what
I'm
have
not
you got?
sure what one we're going to play. I mean, we've played
yeah,
the
we
Khaled
played one. Let's see what else we've got.
I mean, ours are quite short, so if you play it, then maybe I can just talk to it after.
I'll try a bit. 2, 1, what?
Wait for it. Oh.
1. I'll try a bit.
So if we can mute it, it'll keep looping. I mean, and this was one of the beauties. So this has done 105 million views purely on Instagram at this point, this one. And I'll come back to that one. This is our US team in Bermuda.
Yeah. I've done that a few
That
times
might
in the
be
laser.
the after effect of that one. That?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That was before we'd even started racing as well. So I'll talk to each of these. So the first clip, the overboard, all of our athletes are tethered, by the way. He was perfectly fine. If you go over the boat, the side of the boat, you're roped on, you just dangle. You are 2 meters above the water, though, and there are very, very sharp foils underneath the boat. So if you do get hit by the foil, there are problems, fairly severe problems. So everything about this, we hit the right moment. It was 8 seconds. It was the wait for it piece. You know, it's teasing the payoff, as it were. It took off. It started pretty slow, I'd say, a couple of million over a couple of days, and then just exploded overnight. We never quite got to the bottom of it. We asked our friends at Meta and my former colleagues at Instagram what had driven that. They were none the wiser either, so it was one of the mysteries of social. All of those views were organic as well. But what we managed to do is then capitalize that and use that as an opportunity to, if you look at the comments section on that video, everyone is like, what is this? What's happening? Has he passed out? Has he gone overboard? Is he okay? So we use it as an opportunity to educate. So we had a follow-on education series that said, okay, here's why he was running across that boat at 60 miles an hour. That's what that trampoline is that you see there. Here's why he fell off. The G-force is a 3.5 G. It's not, when they're turning, that's a 2-ton boat. So think about it in the scale of, it's a large family hatchback, but it's doing 60 miles an hour on water with a massive, essentially, well, it's a wing, but it's essentially a huge, you know, if you drive a little car along a motorway and it's very windy, you're going to get that movement. So we used it as an educational opportunity. The second clip was one of our crashes. We do not shy away from crashes, from drama, etc. We have a red, amber, green system on broadcast. As long as we know all our athletes are okay, we pretty much go live with it from social straight away. We collaborate with our teams. We are trying to grow their socials as well as ours. And then the last one was in fact, we had 2, didn't we? There was the US team capsizing in Bermuda. Again, if that boat goes up on its side and they fall from there, again, they're tethered in. We had 1 or 2 challenges with the tethers. quite a few of the athletes fell. They hit the wing. It's a carbon fibre wing. It's not soft. And they're out at sea. So we have to make sure, scramble one of our chase boats to go and get them. That was a real sensitive one because there were some injuries with the athletes, so we weren't as quick to get it out as we could be. So that was there. And then the last one was maybe 2 months ago, and it was our Australian boat, and this was them coming to the start line. They hadn't even started the race yet, and they caught a crosswind at a funny angle, and the wing essentially exploded. And this is a 25, 28 metre wing. It goes a long way up. It will more than surpass the height of this building. When that explodes and it falls down on you, again, it's lots of carbon fibre, it's lots of potential pain there. That actually led us to cancelling our Rio race, where we were due to be in May, because that incident exposed a design challenge within all of our fleet of boats. Every boat is the same design, everyone races, it's an equal footing, and then the athletes take that on board. So we had to recall our entire fleet of boats, we had to cancel our first ever Rio event, and they got fixed in time for New York. But that was a real, again, sensitive one to deal with the teams. It's another great example where we can use that to start introducing explainer content. Why has that boat just suddenly exploded on the water? Who are they? What are they doing? Great promotion for the Maximum Effort team, who bought our Australian team 2 weeks ago. So Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are now co-owners of that team. If the Australians could have waited a week or two to have done that, we might have had some even better content with the co-owners, but we can't win them all.
It is what it is. So we're inside our last 10 minutes. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, and maybe we make it a little bit more of an open discussion, is which social media platform do you use for which purpose? You know, why would you put a certain thing on each platform? Lewis put an amazing chart up earlier on with, I know YouTube was top, I forget all the other ones, but there was sort of 12 or so up there on the slide. Just wondering, what would you put where and why?
Yeah, I'm happy to say that first. I mean, our short form, what we're here to talk about, is more to get people interested and grow the game, and then ideally get people to watch our long form, and that's where we do the monetization on YouTube and Facebook. So it's, as you said, the top of that funnel really, to get people interested and then bring that core audience to the monetization opportunities.
But which of those platforms that Lewis had on the slide would you use to help you to do that? Instagram,
TikTok Shorts for that short form, and then YouTube, Facebook for the longer form monetization. X, we use that more sort of reputational building, more shareable pieces. For example, we did a piece at the start of the year called Influencer Training, which is obviously quite inward facing, where we had some golfers pretend to sort of be trained as influencers in this world and growth of YouTube golf and influencers everywhere. We tried to make the players and the talent the influencers, and that had its most success on X because it's the easier one to share amongst your friends and whatnot.
Tom, any, or Alex, any?
Maybe a slight build on that would be understanding the audiences being slightly different on some of the platforms. Yeah. So Instagram, Snap, that we introduced a year ago, working with Carlin and team, and TikTok are yes, you want the real-time reaction to what's happened right now, but much more desire for that context, and whether you're leaning into humour or whether you're leaning into emotion or whether you're leaning into some other, sort of data point that we're picking up. Whereas a lot of what we do on YouTube is a bit more the place that people are going to because they're actively looking for something, rather than they've just stumbled upon it and sort of discovered it. So adding in the layer of who the audience actually is on each of those platforms. We're also doing a lot more on WhatsApp, and that's sort of been almost like they're called broadcast channels to say this is happening, but we're increasingly seeing that people are coming back and repeat engaging with the material because they wanted the immediate, this has happened right now, but then they want to go and check again what it was. So that's been quite interesting. We don't need to go into China, but China's obviously all very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And just think about you on WhatsApp. So, for example, if you've got a fan, they've seen something like, can they forward that just like you do with other WhatsApp content? So they could they
Yes.
can sort of amplify it for you if you've...
Yes, and
Yeah.
I guess that's the other part of all of this. Where are you feeding content into a community rather than just broadcasting into a feed? And,
Yes.
and they obviously vary.
Very good, very good. Before we throw it, there'll be questions in a second, so get ready with your questions. Just one last one, again, throwing it out, is you're obviously being very successful at what you do. What do you think the future is of short form content? Like the next 12 months, what do you think's gonna, is it all, we haven't said Gen AI yet, have we? So what do you think about that? What else do you think is going to be going on?
I mean, a big play for us again is trying to find and cross-pollinate audiences. So, I've loved the golf stuff with the influencers and bringing that in. I know it's quite Marmite for a lot of people. I've loved Ballers League and what they've done to bring a new audience and a crossover there. I think that's super smart, and it's a good way to get... I mean, my son is 10 and is more intrigued by YouTube streamers and creators than he is traditional football players. I also think fandom has slightly changed. Like, he's a fan of Erling Haaland, not necessarily the club, which is a really interesting challenge for the league and for teams as well. So I think that crossover audience part, we're doing a lot more with creators, the Mark Goldbridges of this world, where you can do a watch along and you can have someone explain it from their angle to their audience. That's a big piece for us internally, is getting our senior leadership team comfortable with that content may need to sit outside of our channels, and we can bring people into our sphere, into our community over time. I mean, to the prior question on platforms, Reddit has probably been our third or fourth most important platform over the last 12 months. Just going into that space very carefully, very organically. I won't use the A word because I don't want to get buzzed. So that's been key. But I think that crossover audience is being comfortable with the fact that you don't always control that platform or that community. It needs buy-in. It's perhaps easier for us than a lot of brands because we have that autonomy. But I think we're seeing a lot more of the A word. I mean, fans these days are smart. They know when you're trying to push a product on them,
Yes,
or a proposition. So we have to really live at that intersection.
very good.
I think that's, from our side as well, the relatability. And I think that's why these creators, influencers, whatever we want to call them, are so successful, because you feel like you're more one of them than you are these sports stars. Now, these sports stars have their own personalities, and that's why they're all starting to venture into launching their own channels. I think that's obviously a key part of what's going to happen, already is. But working cross-sport is really important as well. I think we did something with Rory and Gareth Bale. Now you're already reaching two audiences rather than one, two huge people in that. So the cross-sport pollination and collabing is key. AI is obviously something that needs to be talked about. I mean, personally, I think it's obviously something everyone's going to be using, if not already. But it makes that attention even less, I think. Look at the baby filter that was going around recently. That trend is still around, but arguably the peak has gone. If you don't jump on something very quickly with AI, then it quickly goes. With trends and short form, I'd say, not as a long-term proposition. There's plenty to do with it there.
Any final words, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, maybe sort of back to the beginning. I think increasingly no sports fan is the same. Everyone is very individual, and they have their own particular leanings and needs and wants. And yet a lot of what we do is still one-to-many. And the limits to actually being able to deliver one-to-one are knowing what people want. So to your point about data and understanding the audience, understanding which trends to lean into and which ones not to, and time and resource. And so that is the thing, I think, that I'll use the word automation rather than necessarily AI or content generation. I think that is the thing that will start to change, which is that we all of a sudden are able to deliver a lot more variety, but you still need to be making the right decisions about what you're making and where you're putting, rather than just having this machine that's just spouting out loads of stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got about a minute left, so if anyone's got one, I think we can probably take one question. I think we've demonstrated we could have been talking about this for a lot longer. Any questions? Hamish, I knew it was going to be you. You don't need a mic.
A compliment, Richard, you're natural. Patrick, firstly, your stuff is brilliant. I'm biased as a golfer, but it is in terms of that social engagement. But I think you have a bit of an advantage, and my question is really to Alexandra and Tom. Patrick is the tour, and golfers typically, unless they're on the live circuit, play as individuals. You are managing sailors within teams and players within teams. So in terms of getting access to players to create engaging, personality-driven content, what are your challenges around doing that with the teams as a sort of a middleman, as it were?
I think it's going to have to be a quick answer, whoever's answering.
Quickly, yes, you're absolutely right. Access is fundamental because, people follow individuals, and that's what often inspires us. It's been working with the teams directly. It goes back to that sort of earlier point around our role and how the role that we can play is beneficial. And then I think the second part is actually guiding our broadcasters as well in terms of how they use the access. That it shouldn't just be about asking someone how they're feeling ahead of the weekend because all of a sudden that moment's been and gone, but taking the time and saying, I'm going to take 5 minutes and do something slightly different over here that benefits the broadcaster and the club and the league.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that. We are larger than any of our teams at the moment. In 5 years' time, we'd like to see that flip, so the teams are larger. I think Australia are a great example now with their ownership and their structure and their presence in Australia. Their athletes are more notable. They have a chance to lean in and really take advantage of that and do something more bespoke. We, as the league, will support that and amplify it using our channels, but we are trying to educate our teams on how they can do that. Sailors are not they're not necessarily born in a digital world in the same way that when I was with England, the FA, Jack Grealish was the best athlete to work with because he just inherently got it and was able to do that. We're going on that journey to educate them. Once they see it, to Pat's point, and they hook on, it's been a takeoff. But it's educating it is one of our remits.
Thank you to our panellists, Alex, Pat and Tom. Thank you very much.